Here, I've got drywall, okay? And our job today is to put in some, what they call shoe mold, which is this right here, all right? And we're gonna, this is just a scrap, y'all, so don't judge me. But we're gonna put that in so that way we can hide this little transition right here from the drywall to the wood floor, okay? So I have got to do that. Well, the only problem is that this is not a perfect 45. Actually, I have no idea what it is, and I'm actually being serious about this, guys. I just physically cut the board back there. You can see how ugly it looks. I just made it a random angle because that's typically what I find in a lot of homes, especially if they want to do like an octagon style or some kind of eat-in kitchen that, you know, it has some kind of weird supplemented little angles and stuff. Well, anyway, it's an absolute nightmare because I have no idea what that angle is. Well, I'm going to show you how to use this. This, okay, is a speed square. And a speed square is great. Now, why is it great? Because even though you see this one here, this is made of metal, and this I highly recommend, even though it's a few extra bucks. Get something that's made of metal and has those really good things in there. You can also, I am throwing shit at this point. You can also use something like this. It's plastic. I think I paid $6 or $7 for this. These are exactly the same. Now, granted, this one might be a little more accurate. This one might get a little beat up and may break or something because it's made of plastic. But they're all still the same. They all still have the same use. I will show you how to use this in order to figure out what that angle is instead of using an angle measure. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flat side, and I'm calling this the flat side just because it has that little flap right there. And just so you guys are also aware, hopefully I can get this to, oh yeah, it's pretty good. Right there it says pivot with an arrow going up. That's going to be our pivot point. You're going to need to understand what that means here in a second. I'm going to put that pivot point right into that corner. Now, obviously, I don't want to mark on my floor because that would damage my floor, and that's stupid. But it gives me an idea of where it's going to be. So then I take some standard old masking tape. You can also use paper as well. That's perfectly fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that tape underneath. It doesn't have to be exact, okay? We just want to mark the tape instead of marking our floor. And then once I've got this edge nice and flush, I'm going to go on this side on the flat side, and I'm going to make a little line. Okay, cool. Now we got a line. Now this is what we're going to do. Remember I told you about that pivot point? Now we're going to actually make it do what its name is, and we're going to pivot it. So we're going to pivot it, and bam. Okay, so now we're going to read on this side of it, and this has degrees written on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil, and I'm going to draw a circle around where that line intersected. So it was sitting on the wall. Here's my line, right? And then I started to tilt it, and then this side right here hit the wall, and so this line went right here. So I circled it so you guys can see. So that is reading at 20 degrees, okay? We need to remember that number. Now here's the thing. I know this is going to get a little crazy, but follow along with me, okay? I even did the math on a sheet of paper to help you guys out. Sorry I didn't do it in crayon. But you can see, you take 90 degrees, subtract it from what you just measured, and that equals 70 degrees. Now I'm going to plus it 90 degrees. Now you're going to ask me, why the God's name are you going to subtract it and then add it again? Well, because essentially what we're doing is we're taking this triangle and we're flipping it the other direction. So now I know what this is. I want to know what the other side is, okay? So then I'm going to add my 90 degrees again. And then from there, it's going to add, or I'm sorry, it's going to equal 160 degrees. I'm going to divide that in half, and it's going to come out to 80 degrees. Now we know, essentially, that the angle that we're looking for to cut in order to make this piece work is going to be 80 degrees. For some of you guys that may have a hard time kind of following, what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out if I cut this and this at the same angle, that's a difference of 80, so in half. Half of it's going this way, the other half is going this way. I want it to be exactly the same. It's 116 degrees, or 160 degrees. So if I cut 80 degree over here, 80 degree over here, it should form perfectly to give me that 160 degrees. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my speed square. And again, remember that little pivot point right there. And then now I'm looking down here. And what I want to do is I want to move, okay, that's why they call it a pivot point. I'm going to move I'm going to move this thing all the way over until, if you guys can see it without too much glare, the back of the wood is now on 80 degrees. Okay. So right there is 80 degrees. So there's 75, there's 80. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil, I moved a little, and I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to mark this side. Okay. There's your 80 degrees right there. Okay. On this side right here. Okay. This is our 80 degree line. Now I'm going to do exactly what you guys have already seen in the other video. I'm going to go over to my saw. I'm going to line it up to that, and then I'm going to cut it. So let's go do that. All right, so now we got the pieces cut. I did take the excess off on that piece just because it was hanging out and it was driving me nuts. It was cantilevering on this little lip right here. So anyway, I cut it a little shorter. But anyway, you get a chance to see. That is pretty darn close. Now I know what you guys are saying, because I know some of you guys are dicks out there. Hey Neil, or hey Skinny, there's a little freaking gap right there. Yeah, there's going to be. It's not going to be exact science, right? Because again, we don't have any exact measuring tools or expensive tools. We're using something that even this cost me, I think, $11. But you can easily put some caulk into that, or painter's caulk, or also known as acrylics caulk, and you can paint this with a basic white. You'll never even know that tiny, tiny little, less than a 1/16 of an inch of a gap is actually there. So what I did is I took an absolute unknown angle, was able to use an easy little tool, do easy math by subtracting a 90, adding a 90, dividing in half, and then measuring it up over my not table saw, my miter saw, and cut it, and then cut the other piece, and then now I've got a piece that's absolutely almost very, very close to being perfect within my wall. So now that we've done that, let's go take a look at more like framing stuff or other things that we can do with a framing square that could be helpful. All right guys, a few things I want to show you before we move on. Some unbelievable things that you can do with a speed square that a lot of people actually don't know about is sometimes whenever I need to run on a table saw and figure out what the exact center is, or say maybe I am trying to mount this onto the wall because I have some hooks on here or something, I need to know what my level mark is. So what I can do is I can put my speed square there, go like that, flip that bad boy around, go like that. Guess what? There's the center of my wood. Now, the other one that might happen is, hey, I need to cut this at 2 inches or rip this at 2 inches, or hey, I've got a 2x4 that I've got to put this piece of wood around or something. Okay, well that's easy because they have these little notches right here that notch offset every 1/4 of an inch. So if I'm doing a 2x4, then I'll do 3.5, which right here is that amount. So then I'll take my pencil and I'll just drag it, and now I have a perfect straight line of 3.5. And then lastly, obviously this is an automatic 45 degree right here, so I can just mark that, and then boom, there's my 45, and I want to do a 90 degree angle. But let's just say that's not a 45. Well, like I showed you in the last little segment, is I can go on this pivot point here, and I can change that, and let's say I want to do a, I don't know, let's do a 25 degree angle. So I'm at 25 here on the back part of the wood, at my pivot point. This is now, that's the perfect angle right there. If you have brand new lumber, you have what they call S2S, which is, it might be square on each side. Guys, every single time you buy brand new lumber, do not expect the edges to be perfectly straight. Now, obviously I cut this one earlier, so it is, but a lot of times it actually is kind of bow-legged. So whenever I get brand new pieces of wood, before I start using that wood, I'm gonna put this edge on what we call the factory edge right over here. I'm gonna take my speed square, I'm gonna make a mark, and I'm gonna cut right there. Now I know that this, and this are perfectly square, and when I go use my tape measure, if I measure from here and when I measure from here, it's the same exact length between the two. So a lot of really good things to use for speed square, especially if you're trying to get something to be perfectly up and down. You can scoot that thing over there, move it until it's perfectly straight, and then nail it into place. It's a good, nice way to know that you have a perfectly nice, good 90-degree angle. And oh, by the way, if you have a really good one here, they'll have common rafter conversions for your degrees. So if you go all the way down looking at your inches, it will tell you what the degrees need to be in order to make the pitch for your roof. Now you're going to get a lot more of that with your framing square. Framing square does a little bit better job because it's a little bit larger and has a bit more of a graph and numbers on it. But outside of that, everything you need to do for basic, even slightly detailed work can be done based off of a speed square. So if you guys don't have one of these, or even one of these, which is a little bit cheaper, I have this one whenever I'm out doing framing work. It's close to being good. If I'm doing a little bit more precise work, I'm going to use this one here. I mean, just unbelievable in the things that it can do. So 100% definitely recommend to grab these. Now obviously you don't have to go to those big box stores. You can also go to Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight has these as well. They will work. They will do what you need to do. Just understand as you get more and more into the very fine carpenter work, and you're building drawers, you're building a mantle clock, something like that, you're not going to be able to use something like this. You're going to have to go a little bit deeper. But for the majority of you guys, I'm sure you're not doing those kind of things. And if you are, I hope you do. Carpentry is a fantastic thing to get into, but you're just going to have to increase what you have on site in your toolbox in order to do those types of projects. So now let's move on to the framing square. All right, the next one we're going to do is, let's say I have this, let's call it a rafter, right? And I need to put a piece to reinforce it, but I wanted to go flush up against this piece over here. So we're not doing necessarily so much two angles into one. We're just doing one piece that will angle itself into that angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a nice good square piece and I'm going to move it until it can move no more into that crook, which is located right there. Now the other thing I'm going to use, here's my framing square. Now I know it's kind of hard to read. I've had this thing for better part of 20 years, which is probably why it's so freaking rusty. So please just believe me when I tell you that the dimensions that I'm reading off this thing. But I'm going to put the back of it, the framing square, on there on the back so it's flush with the wood itself, and I'm going to move it until is now touching the other side, and then I'm going to read this side, which is going to tell me that it is, looks like 2 1/8 inches over here. Okay, so be mindful. If you read the inside over here, you're reading 0 to 12, but if you're reading this scale, it's 0 to 12. So it's going to be two different numbers. So I recommend using this one out here because we're using this number as if this piece of wood was able to touch this piece of wood, which is what we want to do. So we're going to measure and read off of this scale here, which is 2 1/8. So I will measure that at 2 1/8 inches. Okay, so now we got that measured down. Then what I'm going to do, taking the same exact side, I'm going to line and flush this edge with this edge, and then I'm going to go back 2 1/8 inches. Okay, once I've done that, now what it's time for me to do is take this and use it as a straight edge, and I'm going to go from that point of the wood to that 2 1/8 inch mark that I put over here, and I'm going to draw a line. Okay, So that's what I have now. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my saw and I'm going to cut this piece off here of that direct linear measurement. All right, guys, as you can see, I went ahead and cut at that angle that we talked about earlier. And now it is a perfect fit across this piece here. We could either toenail it over here, or you could even nail it directly across over here, and maybe even toenail it over here in order to affix that piece of wood. All right, guys, hope you really enjoyed this series on angle cutting. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know in the comments. And outside of that, I'll get ready for the next video series, which more than likely is probably going to be on energizing and de-energizing electrical circuits. But I'm looking forward to see you guys later. So have a great day, have a great week, and Semper Fi.